Time for another amazing show right here on Pod TV, formerly IBM TV, and all along those lines. So, looking forward to another great conversation. And I've got another great guest that will be sharing some of their wisdom. And, we do these shows on Mondays and don't do them as regularly on Mondays, but then we also do the Wednesday online dinner party and everything like that. But always have amazing guests and amazing people that are bringing their stories to us and all along those lines. So, I'm definitely looking forward to hearing from Lynn Anderson and the various things that she's got going on and all along those lines. So it ought to be a great conversation. Definitely looking forward to it. I hope that the weather is wonderful where she's at. The weather is definitely wonderful here, even though it might lead to colds and everything like that. So you may hear some sniffles and some things and that part from my end and everything like that. But that doesn't stop us from having fun on these great shows because I think the temperature is like around 70 or 80 here in Durham, North Carolina. So it's some great weather here. I've got to find out where Lynn's at and whether the weather is equally as nice there and everything like that. But it's definitely some great weather here, and we're definitely looking forward to hearing what folks have got going on in their life and with their lives and everything like that. So definitely it's a lot going on. So I'm gonna find out how things are going and where Dr. Lynn is and everything like that. So bring in Dr. Lynn, see what she's got going on in her parts of the world and everything like that. So how are you doing, Dr. Lynn? How is life treating you? And is it as nice there as it is here? Because the weather here has been ridiculous for the last couple of days and everything like that. So I don't know how it's doing where you are, but it's very good here and everything like that.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. I love your introduction to the whole thing. And yes, I am in Sarasota, Florida. It is in the 80s. We have the humidity hasn't come in yet, so it's gorgeous down here in Florida. It's time to be in Florida.
Yeah, I like Florida. I've been there a couple of times. Last time I was there last year for a podcasting conference in Miami and everything like that. And then I used to go a couple of times with some friends of mine to the National Black Theater Festival and all along those lines. So yeah, you're right. That is some great places. I thoroughly enjoyed going last year. Was hoping that I could go this year and wasn't able to make it, unfortunately, and everything like that. But it was definitely some good times that I had there with talking to fellow podcasters and everything like that. But yeah, this weather is some great weather, and I know I'm enjoying it and everything like that. But yeah, it's just interesting how things are transpiring in this weather and everything like that. So I know that you're here to talk about parenting. I don't have any kids of my own. I've got two nephews, and I know that I believe in that whole notion. As did one of my mentors, Baba Chuck Davis, in terms of cultural arts. He was a person that was very much into the African dance here and brought African dance to this area and everything like that. But he definitely believed in that notion of a village to raise children and everything like that. So I don't know if that's something that you believe in as well, but it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts about that because I know that that's definitely something that I'm a big fan of, even though I don't have any kids of my own. I've got two nephews, and I'm proud to say that one of them will be going to college in the fall. So he's was I think accepted in five universities. I got some cousins that are trying to get him to go to their university, which is the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, UNC Charlotte. But I know he was accepted at NC State, North Carolina Central University, App State, and I think Western Carolina and UNCG, if I remember all the colleges correctly and everything like that. But he's gonna
Mhm.
try to make a decision because he wants to go into the legal field and everything like that. So we'll see which way he wants to go in that world way. And I know part of what you talk about is how boys are often taught to suppress their feelings, and you're an award-winning parenting expert. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about this notion of us not just raising our own kids, but other folks' kids as well. 'Cause like I said, I try to keep track of what my nephews are doing, whether that's playing soccer or whether that's some of the video games that they're playing or other things that they might be engaged at. We definitely see each other during the holiday times, even though we live in the same town, and sometimes I'll see them even outside of the holiday times as well. But I just wanted your take on what we should be doing to better parent. Better do a job of parenting and even extended families.
Well, if you think about it in your own childhood, your uncles and your aunts and your grandparents were really instrumental in helping raise you. I mean, I had wonderful relationships. I had an aunt that lived next door, and I used to just scoot over and visit her and, chit chat with her. And because if I was having a little out with my mother, I'd go over and talk to her, and then she'd send me back. We could kind of do that. So all of those relationships are very important to a child. It's not just the parents raising them, but it is the aunts and uncles and the grandparents, and it's the positive things that you can feed into a child, as they're growing, the things you expose them to. I am a very fortunate woman. I have three beautiful grandchildren, and I spend a lot of time with them. I've written letters to them. I take them out. I started a long time ago with my young grandsons. I would do what's called breakfast with grandma, and I
Mhm.
and I would get them, and it would just be them and me, just my grandson and me. We'd get rid of the parents. And you'd be amazed the things that they would share with me and that I could help them with. That sometimes it's difficult for a parent because a parent is so busy parenting. So
They're
yeah,
busy parenting, and sometimes they don't want to hear everything that the kids are involved in. I know that my uh, two nephews, the youngest one was teasing the oldest one because I think the oldest one I don't know if he still has, but he had a young lady that he was dating or flirting with or whatever they were doing and everything like that. So the younger one was teasing him and all along those lines. And of course, he was in denial, saying that we're just friends and there's no relationship. But I think that Langston was probably trying to push Julius into admitting that it was more than what it was, and it didn't help that his uncle was there. And I think there might have even been a couple of second cousins for them that were there as well that are almost like uncles to them and everything like that. So I think that if I remember
yeah,
correctly, at that time there might have been some uh, kind of pressures to find out is this person dating or not dating, because sometimes people start dating at a very young age. Sometimes they start dating at a very later age, because I know I didn't start dating well into my adult years and everything in terms of real dating and everything like that. But I was just wondering your thoughts around that pressure that people feel to reveal maybe a little bit too much, because you mentioned your grandmother. I mean, you're a grandmother, and I know that my mom is a grandmother as well, and I know that sometimes she's probably able to get more out of Julius and Langston than either I am or their dad, my brother, is as well. So because they might feel more comfortable talking to grandma than they do to either uncle or to their dad.
yeah. Well, it is. We, as liberal as we like to think we are, and we are, women tend to be, there's that emotional aspect there. And there's a different kind of nurturing that comes from a woman. And I think that a child and people growing up, it's easier to come maybe and talk, especially when it's emotions and things, with a woman, with your grandmother, than it is perhaps with an uncle so they tend to maybe open things up. And I think also grandchildren, I think they also know that it's a safe place with grandma.
Mm-hmm.
Grandmas are safe people, because we do a lot of the babysitting and a lot of the helping. So those relationships, again, every relationship that a child has as they're growing up that is a positive relationship, it feeds so much into them and just helps foster such wonderful growth in individuals. And every relationship is important. Every
No,
relationship.
yeah, I definitely agree with you, because I know that one of the other relationships that's very important to my nephews is actually my aunt, which would be their great aunt, where they spend quite a bit of time with her when they were playing soccer. She would come to some of the games and everything like that, and they definitely enjoyed the support. And sometimes they would even go visit her because she's here in the same town, Durham, North Carolina, that I'm at, and everything. So I do agree in that notion that it can be even the extended family and sometimes even the extended uh, great family and everything like that. Because, like I said, she's a grandmother of her own. As a matter of fact, I think she may even be a great grandma now and everything like
Wow.
that. But yeah,
Yeah.
because yes, her granddaughter just had a couple of children, so she's a great grandmother twice, twice over. And I think she's in her, because we did a celebration for her a couple of years ago. So she's in her early 80s and everything like that.
Mhm.
So a great grandmother at early 80s and everything like that. But she definitely still has a lot of energy and a lot of verve in her life and everything like
Mhm.
that. So I know one of the books that you wrote is this whole notion of trying to stay sane while raising your teen. And I know a lot of people are wondering how they can stay sane, particularly here, because I know in Durham we've had issues with kids that are trying to find a identity place. So sometimes they get caught up in gangs, and there's not always enough for the kids to do here, even though there are some activity centers like parks and rec centers and others, but it's not always the things that they want to do, because I know that a lot of times they're engaged in video games and other things. So, what are some of your advices for how you can keep the kids engaged if they don't want to go to a bowling, if they don't want to go to a skate park or something like that, and ways that we can keep them engaged?
Well, one of the things that I always did with my children, and I always told my children to do, is keep the values and keep the communication open. And your children will. They will. There will be that defiance, because that is, if we think about it, it's part of human nature. Animals, at some point the mother kicks the baby out, and
Mhm.
there's that fighting there, and they have to go off on their own. So there's that transition, which is very difficult for humans. We extend it a lot longer because we're humans, keep the babies home a lot longer. But I've always said to my children, if you put down those basic values and you keep the door of communication open, they will venture off, but they will find their way back, because they and both of my grandsons, I had two grandsons, they did their little rebellion too. And it was, the parents are hauling their hair out, and I'm like sitting back going, well, you guys did it to me too, and I did it to my mother. There is that sense of rebellion, but it really comes back to what kind of values are you putting down for these kids, and what kind of open communication door, rather than just scolding all the time. Are you listen to the kids?
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I know that I've got some friends of mine that are parents. Some of their kids have gone on and are adults now and everything like that, but they are daddies and everything like that. And but they are daddies to daughters. So, what is your thoughts? And I know you've written a book called "Daddy and Daughter Thoughts." So, what are some of the advice that you give to dads that are trying to raise a daughter? And sometimes they might even be trying to raise the daughter solo. Maybe there's been a divorce, or maybe there's been reasons that they
Mhm.
are the caregivers for the daughter and everything like that. So, what are some of the things that you have in this book in terms of advice for folks that are raising their daughters? Because I know some people might be, well, a couple of things come to mind. I know that some people might be raising if they're adopting a daughter of a different race, so they've got to learn about different hairstyles and things of that nature. And then, of course, there's just things that daughters have to deal with that sons don't have to deal with. And if you're a male role model, that's easy for you to tell the son what to do because you've already done that, but it's not easy for you to tell a daughter what to do because if one thing, you might have been doing the things that you were encouraging your daughter not to get involved with and everything like that. So, what is some of the advice that you give to daddies that are raising daughters?
Well, first off, that is a point, and it is. And every father that I've talked to who has a daughter, they sure change. They whip themselves around. They think very differently, because it's very different to be a teenage boy and to be a man who's raising a daughter. So it really is different. But we do, males and females think, operate, and process differently. And so that is a real challenge when, especially if you are raising a daughter and there's no female in the household, or, to kind of help support that. I would always encourage someone to, that's when I think the aunts, the grandmothers, a cousin, you bring in that female energy to kind of help balance it all off, because really children do need, whether they're a boy or a girl, they do need both
Mhm.
the father input and the mother input, the male input and the female input. That's how we grow as individuals, and that's how a female processes and comes into her own, but also begins to understand males as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now I know that the other thing that a lot of people are concerned about when they're thinking about parenting and all along those lines, or even just life in general, is the time management. And I know sometimes you add a kid into the mix, it can definitely be an issue with time management. I know that I used to jokingly say that my parents had three children before my nephews came around, which was me and my younger brother. But they also started a business. They were activists, but they also started a radio station. So as I got older and started thinking about it, I started thinking of the radio station almost as that third kid because it took up almost as much time as we did and everything like that. So I just wanted some of the advice that you would give in terms of time management and making sure that everybody is getting a fair amount of time.
Well, that's where I would say that, and I'm a big advocate of grandmas, that's when those other relationships can come in, because the parent is parenting, and parenting is a lot of work. And it's like with my grandchildren, when they come and I babysit them, we play.
Mhm.
I'm not getting the laundry done and buying the groceries and doing all the things that go on in a household. I take the time to play. And that's what's really important, is to be able to have the children have that time. But as parents, to sometimes also put time aside and go for a walk with your kid. Take your kid and just go for it. Can be a 30-minute walk and have a conversation. And you would be surprised what comes out. Because I do that with my granddaughter, and we'll just chat about things. And, it gives her that openness to just talk about anything she wants to talk about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of my favorite commercials that I like now, and I don't even remember what the product is for and everything like that, but that ought to show you that it talks about parenting and everything like that. But it is a young lady that is a grandmother and everything like that, and she's going out with her granddaughter, and they're going motorcycling around the country. Like I said, I don't know what the product is for, but I know that I get a giggle every time that I see that commercial, because it seems like she is thoroughly enjoying going motorcycling around the country with her granddaughter and everything like that. So I was wondering, is there any kind of like adventuristic things that you have done with your kids, and would you encourage people to do that kind of adventuristic thing? Because like I said, I wish I could think of what the product is. I'm sure I'll see that commercial later on tonight and everything, and then I'll be like, that's the product I was trying to think about and everything like that.
Well, when I raised my children in the state of Maine,
Uh-huh.
and at the time, Maine was still pretty rural. It still is rural, but we had my father was an avid outdoorsman, and so my children were used to, I mean, trucking through the woods, learning about nature, dragging a canoe, they had a lot of, which was really good for them. They had a lot of experience in the wilderness and outside, and I think that did a lot for them in terms of their ability to grow and to appreciate nature.
Hit the wrong button. I'm glad you brought up nature and everything like that, because I know one of the things that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about is I'm a big fan of creativity, and I sometimes think that we don't do enough of encouraging our kids and even our adults to do creativity. As a part of the pandemic, I was part of a group of vocal kind of audio troupe and everything called the Funky Eye Puppets. But I know that IPC, that's one of the things, and he is a George Lucas disciple, that he encouraged us to do is to get out of our heads and to actually enjoy the notion of play and everything like that. And sometimes it seems like we discourage kids from getting involved in play once they get into their high school and their heading toward adult years and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on that. Is that something that we should be encouraging more of, encouraging more people to get involved in that notion of play and creativity?
Well, yeah, play and creativity is absolutely essential to human beings. It's a part of our growth and development. And the more things you expose a child to, the more things that they can gravitate to, that gives them some kind of purpose and meaning. And I can't think of anything better to expose your children to, or your grandchildren, than Mother Nature. I mean, it's beautiful to get out into nature and to appreciate the birds, the quietude, getting away from it. And especially in, my children were raised without, cell phones. And, I mean, we had regular phones. We didn't have cell phones. It was way before that. I think that's really important today, is to get the kids to put that social media aside and get out and touch and smell, use your senses out in nature. It creates a whole different way of looking at the world.
I agree with you on that, because I know that my nephews now will be 18, and they're what do they call them, Irish twins, like about a year apart and everything. So it'll be 18 and 17 this August and everything like that. Because one was, the oldest was born 2008, the youngest was born 2009. So they'll be 18 and 17 this coming August and everything. But one of the things that I definitely admired my dad for doing, and he is a visual artist, and he's definitely his father, my grandfather, was a scientist, so he's always had a love of nature himself and a love of science. But he had those kids looking at nature at a very young age. I want to say they might have even been babies, and some people might think that in terms of their understanding what they were looking at, that they might not have had that grasp, because I know that there's a whole philosophy of when we develop our brains to its fullest senses and everything like that. But I just thought it was something that I admired him for doing, and I think that it is help them to be the curious individuals that they are even to this day and everything like that. But I just wanted your take on that because I definitely saw him showing them trees, showing them plants, and showing them different things. And I want to say that they might have been less than 1 year old at that particular time.
Yeah, well, curiosity is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And it's wonderful to, the more you expose, the more that curiosity, the more questions they ask, the more information a person seeks out. And that is definitely, I mean, to me, it's wonderful. That's, again, play.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, my granddaughter goes to Montessori school,
Mm-hmm.
and Montessori school has a very different way of educating. I mean, they believe that children should, gravitate to what is important to them and work with people. And the child doesn't have to sit at a desk. If they want to do their math on the floor, they can sit on the floor and do their math and maybe share it with someone. And that's really life. Life isn't sitting at a desk, rote, remembering and spitting things back. Life is a creative thing. And so, yeah, anything you can do to keep kids creative and keep them energetic.
Now, there was a book, I think it was called The Myth of Black Macho and the Superwoman, but I know that you also have some postcards that talk about superwomen and everything like that. And you even say something that we talk about on quite a few of these shows, which is the imposter syndrome, but also the notion of saying no without guilt. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that as well, because I think that whether you're a woman or a man, a lot of times we have a hard time at saying no without feeling guilty about it and everything like that. So I know that that's one of the postcards that you have out there and everything like that. So I was wondering if you could talk about this notion of saying no without guilt and also your thoughts around the imposter syndrome, because I think parents have it. I definitely know business people have it as well, but I think sometimes we try to deny it and we try to let that voice of the critic get in our way and everything like that. But I was wondering, as a parenting expert, your take on those two subjects.
Well, no is a word.
Mm-hmm.
And we put a lot of connotation, we put a negativity on it, but no is a word. It's simply a word that we use. And it's all in how you present the no. If it's a no and you explain it, then it makes sense. But if it's just no, you listen to me, no, that's it. That's very difficult for someone to take. So no, if we look at it, it's a word and we use it sometimes, and sometimes it's a valuable word. I mean, it can save us from getting into trouble. It can take someone, move them in a different direction. And sometimes no is the best thing that could happen to you. Many times in my life, I've received no's. Nope, we don't want it. Nope, doesn't work. No. And it made me go back and reassess what I was doing and come back and do an even better job. So, that's with the no. With the imposter, go ahead.
No, go ahead with the imposter syndrome.
Well, the imposter syndrome is really, I think it's almost exasperated in today's world because we don't know what's real out there and what isn't real out there anymore. And we tend to doubt ourselves, well, am I really good enough? Am I really putting that out there? Or, what I am, is that really who I am when you see me as this self-confident person, but inside I'm crashing, crushed, it's all about self-worth. That's where we overcome that. And it's a realization that every human being has worth. Every human being, we just, in our society, we start labeling people, if you don't have this degree, if you don't have this much money, if you we go down the whole list. And I can tell you in my life, I've met people who have tons of degrees, who have tons of money, and are the most unaware people in the world, and I've met the simplest person who is just the nicest person, who's the person I know would help me if I needed help. Right. So it's really about removing those labels, but we live in a society of labels.
Well, speaking of labels, there's a label that you have actually got as one of your projects. I am a friend. We just actually had our film festival here at the Cultural Center that I'm working at and everything like that. That's part of what people are coming to pick up is some of the lounge equipment that they had as we set up a lounge for people to sit in and everything along those lines, that they were watching both independent films as well as some commercial films like Daughters of the Dust and definitely a couple of other ones like Ganja and Hess, which was a horror film, and a couple of others that were more commercially oriented and everything. But a lot of independent films as well. But there's a term that some people think is a negative term, but apparently you're going to make a whole movie about it and everything like that. So that's the whole notion of being pampered. And I know that a lot of people take that word pampered as a negative, and they think that people are overly pampered. But I think that being pampered can be a good thing. We all would like a good massage, and I actually just heard somebody recently, I think it was on another one of our shows, talk about the notion of they just recently had a pedicure, and they didn't know what they had been missing and everything
Mhm.
like that. So there are ways that we can be pampered, whether we're pampering as kids or whether we're pampering as adults and everything like that. But I did see that you've got this whole project that you're working on. I guess it's going to be a movie. I'm not sure if it's going to be a documentary because we do have the big documentary film festival here, full frame and everything like that, or whether you're going to do it as a commercial animated kind of film. But tell us about growing up a pampered princess.
Well, I was never a pampered princess. I grew up in, like I said, I grew up in a little fishing village off the coast of Maine, a little island, and no, we weren't pampered. But sometimes it's good to put everything aside and take care of just allowing yourself to relax, allowing yourself to feel good about yourself, allowing yourself to have that time. It is not so much, we think of pampered, as being very, I've got money, I'm pampered, I'm, a princess. But pampering also allows you to slow down this processing that's going on in here all the time. It allows you to pull the body back and allows the body and the mind to come to a relaxed place. And when we come to a relaxed place, sometimes we can clear out the mind, and consciousness and awareness become even more so. So I think, you know, pampering is very different than letting someone have whatever they want whenever they want it. That's not pampering. So there's a difference. Is it good to go and get a facial? Yeah, why not? Relax, you know? But is it good to get your way and everything that you want and call that pampering? No, no, that's not pampering.
That's not pampering. I agree with you on that and everything like that. Now, you did say that you discovered, I guess, when you were a divorced woman raising a daughter and a son, an adage, and I mentioned the adage of it takes a village to raise a child and everything. But this one I had not heard of as myself as well. But this adage of women love their sons and raise their daughters. So tell me about how you discovered that adage and what it's supposed to mean and all along those lines. And if it is because some adages are based on fact and based on truth, and whether you found it to be a truthful adage.
Um, no, I think you do both. You love both of them. You love both your son and your daughter. You do raise them differently, and I'm a woman of the women's right generation. We were the women out there fighting to have our voice and to be in the workplace and to be recognized. So there was that women's movement, and I was part of that whole generation that did that. And so as part of that, it was interesting how we raised, most of us raised our sons very differently. And, I raised my son to have very much respect for a woman, that she was his equal. And it's interesting that my daughter in law said to me one day, you should be very proud of your son. He's a wonderful man, and he's very, very respectful of women. And, so I raised both of my children that way. Your son, you raise a little more to be, how can I, you don't worry as much about a son. It's not saying you don't worry. You think of them as being stronger. You do worry, but you think that they have a little more ability to navigate through the world, where a female, you tend to be a little more protective. And my son being the oldest, I can remember saying to him, you watch out for your little sister. Watch out for your sister. And I worried about her in a different way than I worried about him. Equally, I loved both of them. And I raised both. You have to raise them both. You have to teach them both the values.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I said, I'm going to come back to the movie just for a second and everything along those lines. How far are you in this movie? Because I did see you have video that's out there, and I may attach that to
I,
some
I,
later promotions and everything like that that talks about what you need to make it happen. And I know from having friends that are independent filmmakers and haven't been involved in films that it does take a whole crew to put it together, including the crew, the producer, the director, and of course the acting talent. And of course, we've got some pretty good actors here in North Carolina, but I know y'all got some great ones in Florida. There are probably some great ones in Maine and everything like that. And of course, there are a number of festivals, not just the one here, but a number of them that are in that documentary space. So, how far are you, and what is your timeline for making this movie happen?
well, I think, Mark, you have me confused with somebody else because
Oh,
I'm Dr. Lynn and
uh-huh.
I'm a holistic practitioner and I have never produced a movie. I produce DVDs, exercise DVDs and holistic DVDs, but I haven't written the books that you have referred to.
Okay,
I,
okay.
I'm my books are entirely different. They're all in holistic health. So I have not produced a movie and am not producing a movie. Actually, what I'm doing right now is I just finished my first manuscript for
Mhm.
a fictional book. And all my books before this have been educational. I've been in the holistic education field for years. And so now what I've done is I finished a project that I wanted to do, and I'm working on, and eventually I hope that will be a movie somewhere down the road.
No, that's fair enough and everything. Like I said, that's the problem with research is that sometimes you find people that have common names and similar names, and there was somebody that had a similar name and they didn't have the
That's
picture.
okay. That's okay. We got some of this stuff out that was good, and a lot of it that we've been talking about has to do with holistic health as
Right.
well, because holistically you want to be able to raise children and give children the best that you can. We all want our children to be healthy and happy. If it comes down to the two things you want most for those you love in the world, it's health and happiness.
Yeah, you
That's
definitely
it.
want those and happiness and all along those lines. I mean, that's very important and everything like that. What's the biggest thing you think that parents do wrong in terms of their parenting techniques? Like I said, I've talked about this on this show as well as other shows as well. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. There's this notion that a lot of people are loving social media, and that social media is a wonderful thing, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, whether it's a number of other things that are out there. But I know that I am sometimes one that goes out to eat too much. And sometimes when I've gone out to those restaurants, I've seen families that everybody's on the phone with
Yeah.
whoever they're on the phone with, but not engaged in their own family dynamics and everything like that. And well, I will not go up to them because that's their family dynamics, and I'm not going to try to tell people how to live their lives and everything like that. It does sometimes throw me off when I see that, when it seems like all four people are having four separate conversations in four separate devices, whether that's the phone or the computer or the iPad or whatever. So, is that one of the things that you find that people do that is kind of a modern trend these times that is problematic? And what are some of the other things that you wishing parents would do better in their parenting?
Well, and maybe you can relate to this, Mark. When I was growing up, my parents, we came to the table and everybody had to sit down at the table and everybody had to participate in a conversation. I mean, you said please and thank you, and the food was passed around and the television was off, there was nothing on. We were a family and that was the time we came together. And even though, maybe there wasn't a lot of conversation, but there were enough things and enough interaction. And that's what's really important is that kind of interaction that people have when families come together. And I think that again, I do know you go out and there's just too much of sitting in a restaurant and everybody's on their phone and you're like, well, why are you guys out eating together? Nobody's even talking to each other. Put the phones aside and find those times to, maybe it doesn't have to be dinner, maybe that's not, to go out and do something. I'll give you an example. My son came down to visit a little while ago, and I have a 7-year-old granddaughter.
Mhm.
And my son and my daughter and my granddaughter and I went and we played miniature golf. And we went to the place. We were outside, and it's so good for her. There was no phones, there was no nothing. Everything was put aside, and we spent time laughing and playing and talking. And those things are really important for a child. And it's important for children to move. And it's important for children to be able to communicate back and forth. So, yeah, it's hard. I mean, you can't tell people put your phones down. I wish that was maybe a rule. When you went out to dinner or went to a restaurant, everybody had to put their phones aside and communicate. But it's not, but we do live in a very technical world.
It's a very technical world, and unfortunately, that's the attitude that people have and everything like that. I know you published a number of books. I mentioned the one about staying sane. What are some of the other books that you have published, and what is some of the lessons you've learned from those books that you have published?
Mhm. Well, like I said, most of my work is holistic. So the book I've really promoted is How to Master Your Karma, and it's all about karma yoga and the importance of karma and what karma really means and how it connects to your health and your life and what you're doing. So everything has been really sort of geared in that direction because I am, as well as a naturopathic doctor, I'm also a yoga therapist, and I've been teaching for 40 years. So, yeah.
You mentioned karma, and I hear people talk about that all the time, that karma will come back and get you and everything like that. So, what is karma to you, and what does karma mean and everything like that? Because I do agree that people sometimes probably have a mistaken notion of what karma means, and there's this whole
Mhm.
notion of like karma coming back and biting you in the backside and everything like that. So,
Mhm.
what is your take
Mhm.
on the true definition of karma?
Right. Well, that's kind of the pop culture definition. Karma's going to get you, but that's not what karma means because that's judgment. That's that, if I punch you, you're going to punch me back.
Right.
Well, maybe I'll punch you, maybe you won't punch me back. And I use an analogy when I discuss it because it's really cause and effect. And an analogy would be, let's say I go out and I steal something. I'm a thief. We'd all agree, okay, she's a thief, but I
Right.
never get caught. So where's the karma in that? However, I will be carrying the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, right?
Mhm.
Afraid I'm going to get caught. And so I
Mhm.
drag that energy with me throughout my life and it affects my life. Therein of itself is the karma. So it's what you do, it's energy you put out, energy comes back, and you create this whole field of energy that you live in. And that's really what karma is about. It's not just tit for tat. It's not just, if I do something, it's going to come back to me. I might never get caught. I might go my whole life never getting caught, but I'm going to live my life looking over my shoulder. And that's not a very pleasant way to live.
That's not a pleasant way to live. I know it's because one of the other things that I know you talk about quite a bit is the notion of maintaining good health and good karma and good lifestyles, even as we age and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on that because I know that my dad's lady friend is still actively dancing, and I think she's in her 80s and might even be pushing either late 70s or early 80s, and she's still very much an active dancer. Has done dance performances even with some people that were older than her and everything like that. So, and I know that a lot of times people get caught up in this notion of age and worrying about age because we are all mortal beings and everything like that. But it seems to me that even with your karma work, that a lot of that is this notion that age is really irrelevant and we don't need to be hung up on the notion of age, even though we're all going to age at some point or another, and there will be consequences of age, whether that's health issues or whether that's other things going on. But if you do some things like going out in nature to help that, you can slow the progress down, in my mind, and everything. But I just
Mm.
wanted your take on that and how that plays into some of your work in yoga and health as well.
Well, age is an attitude. It's an
Mhm.
attitude. I teach at the hospital, local hospital here, and so I have a lot of older. That's really what I'm teaching is an older population. And there's some people that will come in and they're in their 80s and they are there.
Mhm.
And people will come in their 60s and they're like a really old person because of attitude. Most of it is attitude. Now, that's not to say that as we get older, we don't have limitations and we
Right.
don't have to make modifications. As I remind my students, life is full of modifications.
Mhm.
You know, it's okay to modify and adjust. We have to, throughout our whole life, do that. And as you modify and adjust, you come into that place of feeling really good about who you are and what you are able to do. I cannot do what I did 30 years ago. I cannot do that. I would hurt myself if I did that. And I know that about myself. But I know what I can do and that I can do so much more than I would have been able to do had I not have lived a life of paying attention to my diet and exercise and stress management and all of those things. So it's really about just embracing where you're at,
Yeah, that
being
makes
happy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How much do you think karma plays a role, and just some of the other things that you are involved in, whether that's holistic health and things along those lines in parenting? Because it seems to me that in my mind, a lot of what you're doing is related, even though other people may not see the relation. Because, like I said, I know that my dad is very much into healthy diets and things along those lines, and he will be turning 85 in June, just like mom will be turning. Um, Actually, is that right? No, dad's 2 years older than mom, so actually he'll be turning 86 in June, and mom will be turning 84 in
Mhm,
May and everything. But
mhm,
they still have a lot of energy and all into that space. And I think part of that is because of their attitudes about life and their beliefs in their life, and even the way that they parented me and my uh, younger brother and only brother, and the way that they parented some of the folks that they mentor. Because I think mentoring is a form of parenting. I don't know if you agree with that, but I do think that you don't always just parent your own children, but you sometimes parent others as well. That's kind of what I was alluding to when I said that village, because I know that there are some people that I'll be seeing later on this evening when the African dance comes on. They'll probably use the term Baba Mark and everything like that because they consider me to be like a father-like figure, even though I'm not anywhere directly related to them.
mhm. Well, karma really is, it's what you think, what you say, and what you do is what you become.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple as that. If I'm putting out positive thoughts and I'm speaking positive words and positive actions, that energy is going to come back around to me. I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world because all of my students, everyone around me is such a wonderful, beautiful person. And I say that to people, and people will say to me, well, Dr. Lynn, that's because of the energy you put out. You draw those people in. So you draw in what you put out. That's what karma is really all about. And so when it comes to children, if you are putting those positive, if you are thinking, seeing, and doing positive things, you are sending that energy out to them. And they are absorbing that energy that's around them. And that's the positive thing. That's how karma works. It's all comes down to the exchange of energy.
Well, that change of energy is really important. I noticed that when I did some of the looking at stuff in your bios and things along those lines, that apparently there's a book that you're very impressed with. Apparently it changed your life. So I have no idea what that book is, but it's because it just said it was a book that changed your life. And it was Dr. Lynn on this particular case and everything. So what is this book that changed your life? Was it something simple like the Bible, or was it another book like a yoga book or something like that? So what is this book that changed your life?
Well, karma and studying karma was what really changed my life at a point where, you know, life was, it was a very stressful time. I was a single mother with two young children and I had no money, zip. And I went back to school and it was very difficult to go to school and have a part-time job and raise two kids and to make all of that happen. And that was when I stumbled across yoga and I stumbled across karma yoga. And the lessons, the philosophy and following the philosophy is what took me down the road. And I say that karma and yoga, saved my life because it kept me on that path, even when the path sometimes, and we've all been there, where the path just seems like I can't take another step on this path. And yet it's that energy, that thing inside you that goes, I'll take one more step. It's that faith, it's that belief that keeps you going.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that and everything. What do you think about this notion? Because you kind of alluded to it and everything. Of I know that even myself and I will turn 64 in July 1st to be exact, and everything that I've thought about going back and getting another degree, an advanced degree, even in some of the things that I do work in, like project management, because that can help you with event planning and things along those lines. But then I'm going like, no, I'll just be content with my bachelor's that I got way back in the 80s and everything like that. But I have contemplated every once in a while going back to school, but I'm like, do you really want to be a 64-year-old with the 20-something-year-olds? But you were doing that. So what advice would you give to folks that are contemplating going back to school and everything like that? Because I have contemplated that a few times over the last couple of years, even though, like you said, it's not exactly cheap. So there's also a matter of the economics as to whether I can pull it
Right.
off and everything like that. But I just wondering your take on going back and getting a education at a latter part of your life?
Well, first, I would say never stop learning. Never stop learning. That's essential. Now, I will share it with you is that, I have been taking writing classes. I started about 3 or 4 years ago in the field of fiction because I'd never written fiction. All my writing before had been nonfiction, education, programs. And that's a whole different, I mean, you have to really turn your head completely around from fiction to nonfiction. They're two different genres completely. And it has been a wonderful education. And I have grown tremendously as a person in going back and doing at my age and going back to school again. And I'm a lifelong school person. I've always been going to school. So I think it's not so much the degrees unless you need the degree for something, but it's opening that door and continuing to learn and grow as an individual. That's what's really important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I can understand where that would be very important, that continual growth and everything like that, because I think sometimes we get stagnant in life and even in jobs and everything like that. And sometimes we don't even go for the jobs and opportunities that we are thinking about. So the fact that you're thinking about doing fiction, is there any idea what kind of fiction writing you want to do? Are you planning to write like a detective novel? Or are you planning to write a novel that will be set in Gothic times? So do you have any idea where you're going with your fiction writing?
Well, the story is about a woman who finds in her mother's attic after her mother and father pass away some boxes. And she opens up the boxes, and in the boxes are the lost legacy of her family. And she is tasked with uncovering how the legacy of the family got lost. And she goes back in time to when her grandparents, seventh generation grandparents, came to America as immigrants, and they homestead in the backwoods of Maine, and through the Indian War, and French and Indian War, and it goes into that. And then she discovers through all of this that she is the reincarnation of her grandmother. And with that, she is tasked with following through to the family legacy and finding that link where it got lost and what it was that kept it together and what caused it to get lost.
Well, definitely. It sounds like you got a lot of interesting books and everything like that. Because I know that I had the pleasure of talking to Marianne Anderson, who also believes in this notion of aging gracefully and aging and still having a kind of an attitude and all along those lines. Because she's actually even written a play and everything along those lines and that space. Because some people think that as we get older, that we have to give up parts of our lives as well. But I know that Marian Anderson doesn't believe that, and based on one of the titles of one of your other books, it doesn't seem like you believe it as well. Because I think that some people think that as we get older, we need to give up on intimacy, and it seems like you don't believe that. If I'm looking at the title of one of your other books as well, so I do sound that sometimes people think that as you get older, that you have to give up on that part of your life, but you don't seem to have that belief system.
No, no. I mean, life is meant to be lived to its fullest. And, but, then that's a big open statement. What is its fullest? I am a person who I have dreams and had dreams and was determined to see those dreams come true. And I have. I've met many of my goals in life. There are some I had to let go because as I was going down that road, it's like, well, maybe that's not the road I want to go down. I never wanted to be a big executive business person making, it just wasn't it just wasn't who I am. I'm much more of a teacher and, a therapist. That's much more into the creative part. That's much more where I belong. It doesn't make as much money as if I'd gone in and become a big tech person and made all kinds of money, but some things are more important. And to me, the element of creativity is far more important in this life and what I hope that I will leave behind when I go to the next one.
That makes sense. That Marian Alda is the one when I was trying to think of it. I said Marian Anderson was the opera singer, but Marian Alda did a whole play, and she uses some interesting language because one of her plays was, and she's also got her own podcast and everything. But she said that agent is a that word that also has to deal with a female dog, but she's going to wrestle that word to the ground and everything like that. And she's been doing that play for a while because her whole notion is that she's on a mission to kind of conquer this notion of aging and all along those lines while creating a new way of being old in society. It sounds like y'all have that in common, that y'all are not going to let age get in the way, and that you're going to be vibrant all the way through your life. I know that my dad would have a similar attitude, and I think even my mom as well. So it seems like y'all have that attitude of y'all are definitely not going to let something as trite as age get in the way of being active and everything like that.
Well, and you kind of make that circle back that, moderation, we all have to moderate and we all have to adjust. That's the nature of life. And you can do it, you can fight it, and then you're going to create problems. You're going to end up hurting yourself physically or mentally and put yourself backward. But it's being able to adapt and to be able to accept those things and say, well, maybe I can't do backflips like I could when I was 12 years old and I did those backflips. Maybe I can't do those now, but I don't really need to do those now. That's not what I need to do. So I do what I want to do, and I'm doing something different, and I think that's the key to aging. You can bemoan everything you're losing, or you can embrace everything you're gaining. You gain wisdom with age.
It was age you gain wisdom, and sometimes you have to use that wisdom. Because I know even at this age, and like I said, I've turned 64. I've had some people that have said, "Well, you never settled down, you never had a wife and everything like that, so that means you haven't had kids." And I'm like, "Well, there's more than one way to have kids. You can adopt, you can foster, and you can even raise kids that aren't yours." And everything like that, but it doesn't mean you have to naturally have kids. And then they will jokingly tell me, "Well, you can always go get you can do the Hollywood thing and go get a younger woman and still have the kids even well into your 70s and 80s." But I'm going like, do you really want to be a grandfather like figure watching the graduation at 84 or 85? There's also realism as well and everything like that. That I think
Right. Well, I think you've done a good job. You've got two nephews, and I can tell that you have a deep love and caring for those. And you're absolutely right. You don't need to be a bio. Anybody. This was said to me a long time ago. Anybody can be a biological parent. Doesn't take anything. Be sperm and egg together, you got a biological kid.
Right.
But it's different to raise someone. It's different to implement those parenting and biological birth is two different things, and the parenting and the mentoring and the things that we do, those things come from, they can come from an uncle, they can come from a grandparent. That's what the village, the family is all about.
No, I agree. And I think that that's one of the things that people mistake, even in some of our school systems. I'm not knocking the PTAs and things along those lines, but I do sometimes wish that they would incorporate some of the other figures that are involved in the parenting in some of those meetings. And I know that there are some schools, like I think the Montessori schools that you mentioned, and even some of the KIPP schools, I think incorporate, because my dad's other half, she's involved in KIPP education. And I know that there are some of the charter schools that involved other members of the family other than the immediate parents. And I do wish that there was more of that society-wise and everything like that. So I don't know, is that something that you would agree that it would be perfectly all right to incorporate other members? Because I think even the Quakers, because I know they came down here recently and did a historical tour of our building and everything like that. And I think even some of those societies incorporate more than just the traditional mother and father.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can learn things from an uncle and an aunt that you can't learn from your parents. Maybe they teach you something, how to tie a knot in a certain way, or my aunt taught me how to bake. I remember being a little girl and my aunt teaching me how to make my first cake. Now, my mother was excellent at it, but my aunt and I had fun. We were playing, and she played and she took the time, and I'd never forgotten that she took that time, and how exciting it was that we pulled that cake out of the oven. And I was just a little girl, but my aunt just thought it would be a good thing to show me how to bake a cake. you
No,
know.
the reason I was laughing and everything is because it's a story that I've told a couple of times on this network and on a couple of my shows and everything like that. Is there is a 7 year gap between me and my brother and everything. I was born in '62. He was born in '69. But I do not claim to be, even though if you follow astrology, we're supposed to be masters at it, but not every astrological thing is correct and everything like that. So cancers are supposed to be known as cooks, and I am not a good cook. I'm a good eater. That's why I probably eat out way more than I need to and do DoorDash more than I need to and everything like that. And I've become better in some regards of cooking, partly because of my own aunt, because she started to bring me food and everything like that that she's getting from some of the centers that give out the food to those folks that might need it to supplement their food that they're getting from the grocery store. So she's been doing that now for a few months now, almost a year now that I'm thinking about it and everything like that. So I've had to learn how to cook some of these things that she's bringing me, whether that's kale or whether that's whatever. But I remember when my brother was wanting to learn how to cook, and I've always been an avid reader. He grabbed the cookbook, handed me the cookbook. I read him the cookbook, and he cooked the ingredients, which is probably why he's a better cook than I am because I got to
There
be
you
a
go.
better reader. He got to be the better cook and everything
There
like
you
that.
go.
But
That's called sharing. That's
it,
called
exactly,
sharing, you
it
know.
was that
And
sharing it.
and
That is
yeah,
good and everything.
and siblings also are very important in teaching and helping each other, older, younger, you know. I mean, that's very important too. It's all, you know, extremely important. And I would say, you know, kind of wrapping it all up, that, you know, your family is really important, your family, but you know, your family is extended. There's an
Yeah.
extended family. And I would tell any child, you know, go visit your uncle, go visit your aunt. And I've always said to people, listen, sit back and listen, and get stuff out of your out of the older people around, because that stuff will be invaluable somewhere down the road.
No, it'll be very invaluable. There's two questions I ask everybody, and this will wrap everything up. One I just thought of and everything, so this will be a different question. But the other two questions are asked, and they're very quick answers and everything like that. But you kind of alluded to it earlier because you are a traveler of the world. So is there some, and this is a global network, Pod TV and everything, is there some place that is on your bucket list, or as some people would call it betterly, a wish list that you would like to go to that you haven't been to as of yet, or something that you like to do that you haven't done? Maybe you'll do it like that motorcycle couple that I was talking about that's on that commercial that you are hoping to do maybe with your own grands and everything. So what is on your bucket list, wish list for travel and everything like that? And then the other two questions is how can folks reach you? And I know it's Dr. Lynn and it's all on Amazon, but folks that are watching, how can they reach you? And I get all of my guests on all of my shows that I'm part of to do, particularly if I'm the host and everything and the only host, to give a message of positivity, because I am definitely one who believes that the more messages of positivity, the better we can make this world. So that's my kind of like own personal mission. So every show that I do, I get somebody to express their message of positivity to the global community. So those are the
Right.
three questions, and after that, we'll be done.
Okay, well, I have been very fortunate. As a young child, I decided I wanted to see the world, and I've been very fortunate. There aren't too many places I haven't been, but I did want to go to Antarctica. And for a number of reasons, I haven't been able to go to Antarctica. And it may not ever, I may not go there. It's a bit of a trip, especially from where I am right now. So that would be the one place that I didn't get to that I would have liked to have gone to. The second question is, yes, it's drlynn.com. It's doctorlynn.com. That's my website. Everything is right there. Books, all of that stuff is right there. And then, you know, whenever I'm asked a question like, you know, positive, I always say that the most important thing in your life is your health. It is your wealth. And that is the thing that people should really focus on. The rest of it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you just got to put that stuff aside and say, physically, mentally, and soulfully, my health is the most important thing. Because if I don't have it, I have nothing to give. And I think that one of the beautiful things in life is when we can give. We can give from a healthy being. And to me, that's would be my top
No,
advice.
that's great advice. I appreciate that. Now, is there any place that you, I mean, is there any activity that you want to do? Like I said, I know that I had a ex-girlfriend that went skydiving. I think a couple of times she had to get me to go skydiving, but to me, a plane is for the purpose of going from point A to point B, not to fall out of. But that's just me and everything. But I have contemplated doing like
Okay.
whitewater rafting and some other things like that. And I thought that a hot air balloon might be cool, even though that would be also in the air as well. But those are just things that I have contemplated. But I definitely am not trying to fall out of a plane. But that's just me. But I didn't know if there was anything adventuristic that you would think that you would want to try that you haven't tried, maybe even with your grandkids or with your own kids.
No, that isn't something that I'd want to do. I did, however, I did 16 miles down the Ganges River in India, whitewater rafting. That was years ago. I did that with there were a crew of four. So that was a really, and I'm a very adventuresome person. I've done a lot of adventuresome things. Jumping out of planes, no, that's not something I want to do. And I guess there's not everything that I've ever wanted to do, I've done. And I've enjoyed the adventures. I would say most of my adventure was just to land in a country somewhere and just travel, just go and be with the people and see rather than having some kind of staged, traveling. I've always done traveling just on my own, and I've enjoyed every minute of that. And that's another thing I would say to people: get out and see the world. Until you get out and see the world and really see how people live and very different cultures, it is so important to your growth, because we label people, and we get into that because we have this very narrow view of the world. But go and see what people are like in different parts of the world, and it's tremendous growth.
No, I agree. We have a travel show, and actually it's one of our travel networks, and I know that one of the gentlemen he works with Disney and other places, but he's definitely gone traveling, and he does a lot of travel advice and travel around the world that he documents and everything. So Brandon is his name, and he definitely has done a lot of that, and we air quite a bit of it on because we have technically four channels, even though the entertainment channel and sports channel hasn't been that active lately and everything. But it's technically four channels, and one of the channels is his travel log kind of stuff that he has on one of the things that you can see if you go to podtv.tv. But yeah, he does a lot of that, and I agree with you because I haven't done nearly enough traveling. I, as a baby, went to Turkey because my dad was in the Air Force. So I think I left when I was 6 months and was there until I was 2. I understand that, speaking of raising a village, I understand that the women of Turkey were pampering me and spoiling me, as we were talking about earlier, because I was, I was pampered by my grandfather because I was the first grandson. So he literally came down from rural North Carolina, and apparently he was traveling very fast to come down to Lincoln Hospital to see his firstborn and everything like that, because he wanted to be there when that firstborn was around. But I do know that I've been told that I was pampered for 2.5 years by those ladies in Turkey and everything like that. And I know that after that, my last travel was with a lady friend, and I went on a cruise with that person and everything like that. And I will say that the one thing I enjoyed about the cruise, there were parts of it that I didn't enjoy, but the one thing that I did enjoy was meeting people from different cultures, including I met some people that were going through like that, as Mennonites that were going through like that Asian transformation where you get to go out into the world. There's a name for it and everything, but you get to go have your last kind of seeing the world and being a part of the world before you get indoctrinated into the Mennonite culture. I know there's a term for it, term that's not coming to me and everything like that, but seeing them and also getting a chance to see some of the people in Puerto Rico where we stopped at and some of the other places that we stopped at. I'm not a big fan of the tourism stops and everything like that. I'd rather, like you, go actually get to see the people and actually get to enjoy meeting them and knowing them and learning about their culture. So I'm hoping to do more world travel as I get older, and I definitely want to get more ingrained in learning about the people and not just doing the tourism attractions. That's my problem with cruises. They sometimes need to be too tourist.
Yep, I'm with you. Yeah. So do it. Get out there and travel.
I will definitely have to do that. I'm going to switch to one of these things, so you're going to see the screen change just slightly and everything as I get ready to get this commercial and everything along those lines. If the computer does what the computer is supposed to do, but we all know that computers have a mind of their own. But as I get ready to do that and all along those lines and get us out of here, because I know you've got other things to do. As we get ready to kick me out, but as we get ready to get out of here, because I wanted to hear your thoughts, because we kind of alluded to it, and I want you to hear this poem. It's a fairly long poem, but this will totally get us out of here. but and you can leave after, but as I play the poem and everything like that. But what is your thoughts about the importance of coaches and mentors? We've kind of alluded to it, but coaches as a number of form of mentoring. And my friend Calvin Anderson wrote this poem, but I think he had his friend narrate it for him and everything like that. And it's actually about the whole notion of the importance of coaches. I'm a big fan of Shaka Smart, who's the coach of Marquette, which is where I went to school at, and everything like that, because it seems like he's trying to create a culture, not just a culture of winning, but a culture of actually these people being able to go out into society and be active members of society because they have learned a good life philosophy and everything like that. And he's not the only coach. There are other coaches that have done similar things as well. But I just wanted your thoughts around the importance of coach-like figures and those mentor-like figures, and even those people that might be mentors in other fields. Like a long time ago, and not to ramble too much, but I wrote a play about the Confessions of Buppies and everything like that. And part of the notion was that the person got stranded and had to go on the bus, and therefore he ran into the homeless person, but he also ran into the janitor at his office and realized that the janitor knew more about what was going on in the business than some of the corporate types did as well. So sometimes our mentors may not be the mentors that we're expected, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and that's sort of what I said earlier, is that, you can, we have titles and we think people up here. Sometimes it's the guy who's digging the ditch who knows more, but you have to be very careful too, because there are people out there who are giving information and really don't have the grounding, I mean, anybody can be a coach. Anybody can be a coach. You can take that title. And just, and it's really important that the person is coming from a very sincere place. That's what's really important, So yeah, I think it is important. We all do everybody needs a mentor in this world. I've had mentors. I've had people put their arm around me and help pick me up at times when I was feeling, that I just didn't know if I could get through. So it's important to get out and find those good people. There's lots of good people out there, lots of good people.
Yep. No doubt, Dr. Lynn, I'm glad that I cooked up with you through RTIR. This has been a fascinating conversation. I'll definitely know it'll air several other times on the network and all along those lines, but I definitely hope folks will be reaching out and getting the book and everything along those lines. If you want to depart before, as we get ready to play this poet and everything, I think you'll enjoy the poet. But if you have to get to other things and don't have the 2.5 minutes to hear the poet, I'll understand that as well. But I'm going to play this poet and everything. But if you want to have to depart, I'll understand. But if you want to hear and maybe make some comments on your thoughts afterwards, we can play this. I'll be done.
Yes, I do have to get off to my next appointment, and I want to thank you for this. And I will, thank you so much for the interview. And I hope that you'll send me the link when it's ready, and we'll shoot it out there.
I will definitely do that.
And you have a blessed day.
You do the same. All right, here's our gentleman talking about the importance of coaching.
The difference between thinking and doing and living in the 21st century. They teach us about being a real quarterback-oriented games. We don't have to just use video games and live in the shadows of good things because of them. We grow up with agility far larger and bigger than we are tall. Parents are the champions and have to be our first life coaches and know-it-alls. Who knows how this came to be? Coaches will ask you if you know your right foot from your left, if you know yourself, if you act knowingly good or bad, if you can move and negotiate a field with style and form, if you can tackle or throw a pass, or if your last name is that of a clown, if you can let someone know on the team that you are in trouble before you cause yourself or someone else trouble. If you are ready to learn teamwork or aware that you started out today with your pants down or your sportsmanship was left on the kitchen table, if you know the social studies, the alphabets, science, music, characters, and the stats and the numbers of a great student player eligible to stay on the team. And if you know the poise of great athletic champions and their scientific attitudes that are historical or music to us now, if you have the swag of the game, the discipline, the performance, and artistic form down pat, and if you have the style of gymnastics that the sport has with life, if you have the work ethic and determination to make it all seem easy and not a game at all, if you have the knowledge of all the above, or you don't know things like this even make the difference. I think that when it comes to the importance of parents and their field and self-knowledge, wisdom, virtues, and courage, their teachings, love, respect, care that they illustrate on the field and in the grind of life with their actions and their ideas, experiences, muscle, and strategic magic and skills wrapped around us with their priceless love. For their verbs to be that make us winners in this hard and fast third century that without them, kids and adults, athletes could hardly see or do anything at all. Parents teach us the difference between playing video games and playing on the field. Parents teach us how to be champions. A huge hug should go to parents, coaches, and parent-like community people who have love on the field for you and who are champions for your life, both in and out the games.